Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fully live Friday news episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kilian. I am a security researcher at Vronis, and today I am joined by my coworker and fellow hacker, Kilian, to go over the hacker news of the week. Kilian, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me again. Looking forward to it.
Hello, everyone in the chat as well. Good to see everyone. We're starting at our new traditional later on time. I've got a flight today that's going to take me to Los Angeles, and then I'm going to be checking out the Hackaday SuperCon conference, not this weekend, but next weekend, which I'm really, really excited for. And I'm hoping I might even be able to do a live stream or something at the conference because there's going to be a lot of really cool people there sharing a lot of really cool stuff. So really looking forward to that. Yeah. I am gonna do my. Did this not say canceled a little while ago? I hope not. Honestly, when I select the templates, there's one of them that says canceled. I don't think it was canceled though. But hello, James. Good to see all of you. And some people, Magic Robot says this time is perfect. Obviously, if you are in Europe or on the East Coast, this might be a little late for you. But I'm glad that it works out for some of you. So. We've got a lot of stuff to go over this week, but actually not as much as usual. So that's kind of good, actually. When we have so many stories that we can't give the right attention to some of the really interesting ones, I feel like we kind of don't explain as much as we should. So I think this week we have a good mix of things to take a look at. And also, as usual, I want to give a shout out to our Discord server if you want to check it out. We have users like James sharing some really great stuff also that we may or may not have time to get to. So if you want to continue the conversation or if you've got questions you want us to answer on our Q&A stream about some of the news or something like that, then feel free to join. The short link should hopefully still work. That is nugget, nugget.lol. That domain was like 99 cents. So all right, so let's go ahead and talk about some news this week. This is one that I found to be very funny because it's within my area of expertise, so I've got some stuff I can say about it. Okay, so MAC address detection and MAC address spying has been a thing for a long time. And originally, this was something that was a concern because major retailers were tying your movements together by taking a look at that MAC address of your phone as you moved around and building a profile about you. People didn't like that. So, Kilian, how would you describe a MAC address to somebody who isn't really into networking or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say kind of like a fingerprint, right? It's a physical identifier of your device. So you could think of it as a fingerprint of sorts. It's it's a number that's technically sort of immutable or supposed to be immutable. There are ways to change it, but it should be a physical address tied to your device.
Exactly. Yeah. And I also will describe it as like a license plate or
Yeah.
like something else that identifies a particular device as it moves around the world. Now, yeah, a bunch of people got in trouble because they were trying to track you using this identifier, and device manufacturers were like, all right, you guys are crazy. We can't just have this out there anymore. It's basically like you're running around like a tagged animal, being detected by all these, frankly, people that are selling your information all over the place. So Apple was one of the first providers to really start randomizing this and making it harder and harder to get the real MAC address to tie you to certain situations. And one of the extensions of this privacy fight was not only having your MAC address randomized when you're not connected to a Wi-Fi network, but when you are. And you know why? Because of people like me. So what I did was all these manufacturers all right, we're going to randomize MAC addresses. We're going to make it so when you're walking around, your real MAC address is hidden by these fake ones that are calling out for networks you joined in the past. Well, me being me, I will create a bunch of fake networks and find one that you've connected to in the past. And then if your phone recognizes it and tries to join it, like a Starbucks, Google network or whatever, I can get your real MAC address. So manufacturers were like, okay, this is exhausting. Now we're going to make it so every time you join a Wi-Fi network, it gives a unique fake MAC address. So basically it keeps track of the fake MAC address it assigns to every network that it joins, and it will only use that one fake MAC address when joining that network. Sounds pretty good, right? Now I've eliminated the two scenarios where me, the hacker, can track you. I can't create a bunch of fake networks to lure you into joining because you're going to give me a different random MAC address per fake network that I create. And if you're just walking around, then you're also using a fake MAC address. So theoretically, you should be protected, right? Well, no, not exactly. It turns out that it has been possible the entire time. And this has been like a decade or so that some of these protections have been put into place. Oh, yeah, 2013. that you could actually extract the MAC address, the real trackable MAC address of an iPhone after they connected to a network, because it was just contained in a different field of some of the packets that were being sent. Now, I will admit this does make it a little bit more difficult. So it means that you would actually have to have someone connect to a network rather than being able to just sit back and sniff the information. But frankly, it really didn't really protect you that much. If somebody wanted to set up a tracking situation, it would be very, very simple to do so. It's basically a small modification to the existing method I was using of creating a fake network. Now, instead of just emulating a fake network, I would need to really make one you can connect to. And then when you connect, extract this one packet that has all of your real MAC address information in it. So yeah, if you thought Apple was on the cutting edge of security, sometimes they make little mistakes as well. Obviously, like I said, there were some wins here. It did make it more difficult for like big store retailers and like other people who are tracking you in public to just grab this information out of the air in like a legal way. But now I guess they're just incentivized to provide you with Wi-Fi connection, and then boom, they can get around this protection that was put in place because it was being abused so much. So you better believe that any way that these people can get around those tracking restrictions, they will absolutely latch onto. The fact that it's been possible the whole time to get around this sort of thing kind of makes you wonder why companies are investing so much in giving you, for example, free Wi-Fi
Right.
while you're shopping or something like that. So it really is economic to build up data about your customers. It gives you a lot of insight into them, and tracking them is really tricky. So this is just another back and forth in the tracking war between privacy focused people who are trying to hide these details to make it harder to track you from place to place, and then people who really want to know where you're going and sell that information to someone as a result. So yeah, pretty crazy. Yes. All right. James says there's a tutorial to change your flippers, a Bluetooth Mac. I changed my honeypot Mac to a NAS Mac so that looks juicy. Um, I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about the flipper. I think I have one on my desk somewhere. I don't know where it is. But I went ahead and, oh, it's sitting right here. I took my flipper and I flashed it with some alternative firmware. And I'm curious if anybody else in our audience has done this, or what their experience has been, because it's pretty smooth. So since James mentioned the flipper, I might as well go to our flipper project and talk about what that is this week. So we went ahead and demonstrated the Apple Juice vulnerability that was basically like spamming a bunch of notifications of devices that are trying to pair. It was not necessarily like malicious, but it's very annoying. And theoretically, it could also be a denial of service attack if you keep them popping up on the screen and make it difficult to use the phone. Again, like not the craziest thing in the world, but still very annoying and very visible. So the flipper could be described in those exact same words: very annoying and very visible. The kind of attacks people tend to prefer, like popping open the charging port on a Tesla, or like, turning off a TV in a busy bar or something like that. So it certainly fits that one of the developers for these alternative Flipper Zero operating systems was keen to develop an Android-based version of this that uses the same capabilities but is even more annoying. And Bleeping Computers reporting that it has been confirmed that this does work. It is very, very irritating. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. So we just yeah. So there is, of course, a way to disable this, but it's kind of hard to do like while these alerts are still enabled. And this is from a particular fork called, what is it? The Extreme firmware. So installing this on a flipper was actually pretty easy. I was impressed. I myself have struggled with making it an easy process to like update microcontrollers, since I work with them a lot and we sell our own type of hacking tools as well. It was something that as I was learning this, I was like, okay, there's a limited number of ways to make it easy for people to try something really like out there or new that I would never want to support, because maybe it's too disruptive, or it's too much for beginners to go ahead and like just get their hands on right away. So in this case, installing it was a breeze. I will kind of cut the suspense though. I wasn't able to get it working, or rather, it's not pre-installed on the version that currently installs through the web updater. But what's cool about this is if you do want to try out this version and maybe check out the upcoming version when it drops that has the BLE spammer, you can just go to their update page right here, their web updater. You can click on this and it will automatically detect your flipper and it will flash this alternative firmware onto it and allow you to do some pretty cool stuff. So it has different art on it. It's a different look and feel. And the point here is that as soon as it finishes updating the, I guess, web updater version to the developer version that currently has the BLE spammer, you can expect some of these apps that are not available on the main flipper to be as easy to use for yourself as just clicking on this, going to the web updater, clicking connect, and going through the process of flashing it. It took me like less than 3 minutes to install this onto my flipper. And if you don't like it, you can always install the official stock bin file or the binary file back onto the flipper, and it goes right back to the way it was. So yeah, pretty easy to try out. Again, I was a little disappointed that I wasn't able to get it working because I wanted to demo it on the stream. But then again, I tried it literally 30 minutes before we went live, and I still had to set up the studio after. So I'm about to go on a very long flight. I'm not going to try to disrupt anybody else's phones, but I will be checking this out and seeing if I can figure it out on the plane. So, you know, we'll see what happens in the name of research. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to talk about this latest port of the Apple Juice style of attack maybe next week if I can get it working on this flipper, or if it drops via the web interface version, because I really like being able to just flash this over. It was an easy process, and I don't want to spend more than like 20 minutes on this. It seems cool, but not something I want to spend my whole weekend doing.
It's funny, actually, we talk about the flipper. I read another article in more of the mainstream media, it might have been Gizmodo or somewhere, talking about you better get them now because I guess increasingly the the various state legislatures and things like that are starting to constrict around this type of thing, which I found interesting that it's gotten popular enough to bleed over to mainstream type of coverage or more mainstream type of coverage.
Yeah, I think there's going to be more sensationalist stuff
Yeah.
coming out. There's a couple different trends as well. I see there's a lot of fake flipper videos where like somebody does something that I know is impossible to do with the flipper. And it's like those perpetual like emotion like videos,
Right.
or like free energy videos on like TikTok or YouTube, where like the guy shows off like an impossible machine that's like sustaining itself with energy with no loss or something like that. Where it's like, I know this isn't real, but it gets people talking. And because a lot of people don't know the capabilities of this, it's pretty easy to get 1 million views or something without needing to actually pull off the thing. So I've seen a number of fake flipper videos, and that may drive people to want to legislate this more if they overestimate the ability of this thing to cause chaos. Now, of course, it can cause disruptions, and it does serve as a proof of concept for some pretty interesting things. But I haven't seen it do anything really, truly crazy that's going to stop a show or like really make it become widely illegal. The developers are pretty responsible, and then these alternative forks which do allow you to do stuff are not, let's say, like super easy to get things set up all the time. So if you're looking for a more niche, less supported attack, like you might be able to do it if the documentation is good enough, but there's no guarantee. The bar is a lot higher, and I'm seeing that those are kind of rare, more technically skilled attacks, not the kind of like plug and play, just go hack everything, like kind of thing that the media is trying to make it seem like these are able to do. And I know it's also been banned in like Brazil and on Amazon. So it does seem that this is becoming aware. People are becoming aware of this tool through some of these like very outrageous videos that make people think it might be a little bit more insidious than it really is.
Yeah.
I think this is recorded video. How do you feel now? That's it. That's all. You challenged me, and I had to do that. Oh wow, look at that. We have a convenient offer to promote our services that has now been added to our block list. Okay, cool. So that's all I have for the flipper today. Just a little like showing off of how easy it was to like actually set this up. Again, it didn't actually like work, but I'm hoping it will work in the near future. Oh, now that I'm in this different view, you can also see the spray painted Terminator head that I'm preparing for Halloween. Kilian, I don't know if you met my co-host. Let me just show you this really quick. I'll be releasing the code for this because I like what I did and I think it's cool. But this is a 3D printed Terminator head, spray painted silver, of course, with the teeth still white. And it's going to yell at people every time that they take candy. So this is its final form since I'm leaving today. And I think it's going to look really good.
I think I saw that on the thumbnail of your video on maybe Wednesday.
Okay, good. It's been so weird having it sitting next to me, and I forget it sometimes, and then I see it again.
I love
Okay.
it.
Let's go to something that's going to stoke everyone's fears and make everyone a little
Yeah.
concerned. So, all right, we see these scandalous selfies, and these are bait photos that were put onto computers that were sent to technicians to repair at a couple different stores. Fortunately, none in my area, but a lot of these were in Canada, or I think the northern United States. And these are major brands like Best Buy and like other places. Mobile Clinic, Canada Computers and Electronics, not that popular in my area. However, like this is just kind of indicative of some of these like local places that you would take your computer to. So these journalists decided to take their computers to these places, and a handful of them initially said, like, okay, in order to fix whatever's wrong with your computer, we might need to reinstall the operating system. And that would have wiped everything and kind of like invalidated the study. So anywhere that said that they were going to need to do that, potentially, they basically opted out of the study. So it's worth noting that some repair shops were just like, we're going to wipe your hard drive.
Sure.
And they were not included in this list. What the businesses that were included proceeded to like get the administrative password so they could log in, and then rifled around a lot of them. The photos that were stored on the computer, especially these like kind of like intimate selfie photos that were sprinkled around throughout the computer.
Sure.
And some people also saved these to USB drives. Now, what was interesting was there was some attempt of cover up too, where some of the people who were accessing these photos then removed the log of having opened them, so they didn't appear in like recently accessed or open files.
Right.
And the fact that not only did they go into this, they started like looking at information they didn't need to go through, and they started saving information they found interesting about customers to remote devices. Kind of confirms a lot of people's worst fears when it comes to these sorts of attacks. Like, you know, I guess I would call it an attack, an insider attack, when someone who's in a trusted position, like a technician, goes ahead and rifles through stuff that doesn't belong to them on a computer they're repairing, and then does whatever with it. Like, we don't really know what they would do with that information. I mean, obviously, if it's like a sexy selfie, that's kind of self-explanatory, and that seems like what they were doing here. But there's also concerns about financial information or other things that could be very valuable to someone who's able to turn around and sell that data. Like, we were just talking about how some US Navy chief was able to use his access to a background check service to sell information about people on the darknet. Like, you know, imagine what kind of information you could potentially get from someone's laptop. That's extremely concerning. So I don't even have necessarily a recommendation aside from go to like larger chains, except a lot of larger chains were involved in the study. So, you know, like if you have to give up your administrative password to have your computer repaired, that is already an unfortunate situation, because you don't really have a lot of control over what happens after they get access to that device. Now, if you're an IT professional, you want to lock it down in a way that makes it so that they're able to like access what they need to, but not access anything further, then that's a good step. But most people probably wouldn't have the expertise to do that. So what I hate about the story is I don't really have a lot of advice on like what to do about this particular threat, because it's something that like I've always been like afraid of. But now that I see that journalists are like showing this actually happens and it's pretty widespread, it makes me even more concerned.
I don't know about Mac, but I want to say a few years ago in Windows, in the like recovery process that's built in, they have a way that will basically reinstall the operating system without wiping the files. It's maybe slightly more technical than most people, but I don't believe it's super difficult. So if you have a Windows computer and you run into something like that, it's out there, it's available. You know, maybe your grandma won't do it, but you know, most slightly more tech savvy people could help relatives do it. I mean, Kody, I would imagine you've probably fixed a million people's computers, same with me. But this is a way to make it a little bit easier without having to entrust it to somebody else, especially a stranger. And my guess is there's a YouTube video on how to run through it. Like there's probably 1,000 of them. And I assume Mac probably has something similar, like a non-destructive operating system reinstall.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might be like James is just saying, like, you know, keep good backups and then wipe the computer. That's really the thing that sucks, is like if you don't keep good backups, it's always gonna fail on a day that's like the least you least expect it. It's the worst possible day. You're gonna need that data immediately. So yeah, that's the dangerous thing is like often like if you don't have good backups, then you're forced to say yes to the situation because you need the data more than you need the computer. And
Right.
that's the problem. Like if it's the computer that needs to be repaired, but the data on it is the most important thing, you kind of get backed into a corner where like there's not a lot you can do if you don't take good care of that information first. So
Yeah.
computers need a valet mode. Yes, I agree. They
Yeah.
need a valet mode where like it leaves big dirty fingerprints on everything they touch.
I mean, maybe that's the other vice too. Like expanding what James said is just, I mean, however much or little you trust Google or Apple, I know has their service. They offer you some level of storage. It's pretty easy to set that backup um, to do that. I know I had to take an older phone of mine in for a warranty repair. Luckily, before I was able to do that, I factory reset it for that exact reason because I would feel like a phone, even more so than maybe a regular computer, really is the keys to your digital life. If you think about all the stuff that we rely on for that.
I've got some serious like "don't tread on me" energy from our chat talking about people repairing their computers. It seems like nobody in our chat wants anybody touching their computer after reading the story, or really even before reading the story.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think the moral of this is just like it's difficult to trust anybody in these sorts of environments when you see stories like this, and keeping good backups is really the difference between like needing the computer to be up because you need what's on it versus like just needing the computer to get fixed and you don't really care if they can access the data or not because it's not important to keep the data, All right, so next up, anytime cybersecurity stories trickle all the way down to like CNN, I know that they're like big enough to like jump off of the like bleeping computer kind of stage. This is something that is inevitable. I feel like just because of the way that people tend to um, resell these vulnerabilities over and over and over when a company starts weaponizing them. So we currently have a situation where developers who find a zero-day vulnerability that's really bad are incentivized to turn it into these kind of mercenary groups that will weaponize it and sell it to basically whoever. And there was apparently an incident in which Vietnam-aligned hackers or hackers based in Vietnam were targeting U.S. lawmakers, United Nations officials, and journalists by engaging with them on X, formerly known as Twitter. So this was brazen, and usually you see
Right.
people reaching out directly or trying to send like a phishing email or something, but these hackers were actually posting links that would infect devices that open them in a browser. And this was just another one of these like spyware weapons developed by mercenary groups that are, it seems like, selling it or offering it to more and more people, or potentially some of these tools might be leaked. So it's unknown
Right.
whether or not some of these groups are able to access these tools without paying for them. And if that's the case, then it becomes really, really difficult to know who is using them to do some of these things that are definitely going to get investigated. Like if you take a swing, at the US government, you can generally expect a response. So the attribution so far is to Cytrox. This is based in North Macedonia. And it seems like it's also owned by Intelixia, which is an umbrella of European-based companies that own Cytrox. So it's funny because I've seen Cytrox and some of these other spyware companies at like cybersecurity conventions and things like that. So these are kind of a weird like quasi gray area where like it's supposed to be for governments and police agencies or whatever, but like the definition of that really changes when it comes to these countries that are either maybe a little bit corrupt or don't have great records or so it's interesting to see that some of these have been now officially like put on list of like sanctioned entities by the United States government. That seems to be the case with this particular one, so it's already been placed on that list. But the fact that now the U.S. government officials have been targeted by it kind of indicates that putting it on the list didn't necessarily deter them from creating the inevitable threat that I guess the U.S. government saw in designating that way in the first place. So yeah, you try to deliver spyware to the U.S. government, and generally you get a further response. And seeing it as this is a commercial entity, it's going to be interesting to see what the response is here.
Z had a funny comment. Sidetrack sounds like a bathroom cleaner.
It does. It sounds like it would get things really clean.
Or it sounds like something you'd see, at least in the US, where we can advertise like prescription medicines. Ask your hacker about Sidetracks.
All right, let me see what else we have. This is I believe, a Belarusian group that is targeting European governments with a Roundcube webmail bug. Again, this is, as soon as I see things jump out of Bleeping Computer, I know that these are like larger like attacks. This is a vulnerability we previously reported on, but it seems like now this is a low sophistication tool set that has been distributed to a number of different groups, and this APT is kind of taking and running with it. The targets here seem to be American, European officials, and military and diplomatic personnel in Europe. The idea also is that this attack, when done successfully, allows the attackers to have anybody that opens this email link in a browser to basically access all of their emails. So it's an espionage-focused attack, not, as far as we can see, like a ransomware group or financially motivated group.
But I mean, think about it. This is usually kind of the first step. If it's, a nation state or something like that targeting government officials, it's only next week we're going to see this. They're going to use this as a launching point for ransomware or something like that. It's if it's a 0-click vulnerability like this, the profit-driven entities will pick it up sooner or later.
Yeah. So yeah, it always kind of runs in these like cycles where like we hear about a vulnerability, and then like a week or two later we hear about these campaigns that are being run by organized groups. And in this case also, it seems like this is not a sophisticated kind of attack, but it is a very persistent one. And it's really the fact that it's running so often and it's running so many campaigns at the same time that makes this attack notable. All right. Next up, I like this because it's an interesting way of using AI research to fight back against copyright concerns that artists are having about their work being scraped basically without their permission and added to large language models or AI generation models. So like kind of DALL-E or some of the other things you're seeing pop up now. So this is an idea to insert pixels that cause the models, when they scrape this data, to misclassify information and produce basically useless results. And it's the way they're describing it is a poison pill, so that if the AI model ingests enough of this, it will cause the model to have fundamental misunderstandings when it's giving a response. So you'll ask it something, and then it'll just come up with something totally unhinged or weird or strange, or it'll tend to hallucinate more. All these things are caused by like connections being forged that don't help the model figure out how things are working, or to describe them, or to generate them. So that's cool. I like that they're able to figure out the way that the AI is learning and teach it things that cause it to have a misguided or messed up view of the task that it's supposed to complete. This gives artists a way to kind of strike back against their work being included without permission, and cause some real headaches for people that are running these models or harvesting information without permission, especially if they try to use it for some sort of commercial purpose. So I think it's cool. Obviously, the effectiveness here is going to go back and forth depending on how people and organizations with varying amounts of resources respond to this. So if you're a huge corporation that's doing the scraping, I'm sure you can, find the resources necessary to remove these sorts of images, or to detect them in training and remove them from data sets, to avoid wasting tremendous amounts of power training AI models on flawed data. But yeah, this is going to be a back and forth. I guess we'll see what the next response to this is. And of course, if AI companies were able to filter out this information, I don't imagine they would go out there and like talk about this a lot, because it would just kind of stimulate this back and forth to be even more aggressive in kind of burying the poison pill when it comes to putting pieces out there for models to find and then potentially corrupt themselves.
Yeah, no, I read this even before we were going to talk about it. I actually kind of love this, to be honest. Artists and creators who are out there, photographers or writers, anybody who's out there creating this type of stuff. I mean, in the US at least, they have copyright protection, and it's not fair to them to have their work used in this way, especially without consent. So I think this is a really cool way to kind of get back. And shout out to any of my steganography nerds out there. This is a very similar concept to that, just for different purposes.
All right, TJ Green says he wants to raise an AI as their own evil prodigy. I mean, you can. It's just like, I think right now you can download and run Llama and just like keep teaching it stuff and like see. I don't know how many tokens it can accept, so it might not have a great memory, but you could raise it to be your own little minion. Like I'm sure you can do that. I think we've crossed that technological threshold, and that is really the way that we're doing software nowadays. Is we're teaching it, either through giant training sets or through interactions where we give it more context and guidance with prompts. Like it's kind of cool that that's kind of where we're actually at. Steg hide is another suggestion. Yeah, steganography is a way of hiding information inside of an image. Of course, the AI needs to process it on some level in order for it to have an impact on its training. But yes, like there are techniques for hiding information inside images and pixels in ways that can be retrieved, but are not immediately obvious. So I think that, like being able to like uncover information that isn't immediately visible is going to be the way that this kind of develops over time. But still, really, really cool to see artists kind of having options for striking back against some of these massive companies harvesting their images for large language models and image generation AIs. All right, so I really like OSINT, and I did a demo earlier this week about how you can use the new photo upload ability on ChatGPT to learn about where and when a picture was taken. So GeoGuessr is going to become a lot easier because if you have the reasonable clues necessary to find out where you are, it's actually pretty accurate at this, and it does a really good job. So it's interesting to see that Google's coming out with a number of new features that make it even easier to learn about a location by giving you access to more data at the same time. So some of these live views are things like weather, traffic, air pollution. It kind of gives you the ability to both simulate the environment of a city or something like that with available information, and also to look at the live view and kind of see what like traffic conditions are like in a more immersive, interesting kind of integrated way. So for OSINT people that want to be able to get a view of a place that they are not, in physically, this is really cool. It gives you more ways of exploring an environment and confirming whether or not maybe a photo was taken in a specific place. So if you like OSINT, I think that a lot of the ways that Google has chosen to integrate data sources and present it in an immersive way might be useful for people that are trying to use this for OSINT purposes. All right. This is something we talked about, I feel like weeks ago, but the International Criminal Court has confirmed a cyber attack 5 weeks ago. Oh yeah, 5 weeks ago. That's when we talked about it. And they disclosed the breach on September 19th. It was an espionage operation and it looked as though it was aimed at disrupting the business of the court. They were kind of vague about like exactly what it was that was the target here, except for the ability of the court to hold, people accountable in general. So yeah, again, not too specific about attribution here. So it seems like maybe they don't know.
Sure.
But yeah, continuing fallout from that attack that seems espionage focused. But again, this seems like an advanced persistent threat. And with the role of the International Criminal Court, you can expect that that is a probably pretty regular thing. All right, so American Family Insurance is confirming a cyber attack that has caused IT outages with people being unable to pay their bills and access certain information about their accounts. The investigation is still ongoing, and they're trying to get their systems back online. Bleeping Computer is still trying to, get the scoop on this as well, as you can see. But it seems as though this is having a pretty widespread impact on people's ability to interact with their American Family Insurance account. Yeah, these attacks tend to be pretty successful. Seeing as we're looking at a lot of public pressure, aka like things being broken and like public like acknowledgement of the attack, I would assume that this is some sort of like ransomware attack where things have been forcibly shut down and they're being extorted for money to get it back online. So hopefully everything we said about backups is part of their plan. All right. Security CoPilot is a
Hmm.
feature that Microsoft has announced for an early access program. This is like ChatGPT, but for asking questions about security stuff in their security suites. So obviously, Microsoft has a lot of security products, and not everybody knows how to use them or make sense of the information coming out of them. So the idea is to give them a ChatGPT like interface for using all those features and get kind of walked through it. So if it was your first day on the job, you could theoretically ask it a bunch of questions, get up and running, and figure out what sorts of things you're supposed to be paying attention to, as well as respond to attacks. So really good idea here. Again, this is early access, so I haven't really seen too much about it yet, but I am interested in seeing where these sorts of products go, and whether or not they're actually useful or suffer from some of the types of limitations that we've seen before. Obviously, we talked, I think, like 2 weeks ago about how PyTorch Serve is vulnerable, the service that allows you to serve these helpful large language models.
Hmm.
So if those are vulnerable and this thing is in charge of security controls, things could get interesting. But again, there's no proof of this. It's just interesting to note that 2 weeks ago we were talking about how the servers hosting these large language models were vulnerable, and then now
Right.
we're talking about Microsoft Copilot, which is a large language model directly connected to the security controls.
The
Probably
the
fine.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, I mean, Microsoft seems to be very, very all in on AI now. Um, they've been pushing some of their other AI tools, like the business productivity side of it, pretty steadily for the last couple months. And that interestingly opens up a number of other security concerns because it's reading in all of the corporate data and all the sensitive information. Um, and it's making it actually difficult for them to keep track of it, honestly. So, like, if it reads it in and adjusts it, and you ask it to produce some information, it actually loses like the tags that they encourage you to place on it when it regenerates that data. So it's actually making things more convenient, but also making security way more difficult. And I'm kind of curious how this is going to adapt to that because it's sort of breaking their other security controls in a way. So
Yes. Donald says Cisco is doing something similar. I think the point is that it's a co-pilot, so anyone using it should know if it's talking nonsense. Yeah. So obviously, like, have my example of a complete beginner coming up and like getting ready
right.
for the day and be like, I'm going to learn how to do Microsoft Copilot stuff today, and letting this thing be the pilot and then you're the co-pilot. That's not a good
Hmm.
idea. You should have somebody experienced running it and basically know what questions to ask and all that. So
Hmm.
there's definitely a level of know-how here that's implied by the name Copilot. Yes, that is an excellent point. Um, James also says people shouldn't fall asleep at the wheel of their Tesla either. That's also a very fair assessment. I feel like some people that might have played a little fast and loose with their credentials and gotten the job might now feel comfortable just letting it do the driving. I guess we'll see, because obviously, like the co-pilot, yeah, that's been a subject of debate when it comes to letting like cars drive themselves. Like in this case, like if it's supposed to be the co-pilot, but you could let it do most things, then will some
Right.
people let it take on more responsibility than it was designed for? I
Actually,
guess we'll find
before
out.
you move on from that, is I don't know if we covered it in this story, but did you just hear? Speaking of autonomous cars and that stuff, California pulled the approval for one of the autonomous vehicle companies because of like really severe accidents.
Yeah, yeah. I did. The taxi service in San Francisco that I would always
Hmm.
shame people by like taking like videos on them riding in it with no driver and like looking helpless. Like they always hold up their hands just to show me they're not doing it. Yeah, that
Right.
company. Yeah, no, I did see that. It's very interesting. I haven't gotten all the details for
Hmm.
I read the story. I know that
Yeah.
they're saying that they can get back in compliance anytime. Like they
Hmm.
just have to like submit like, some paperwork, but it is interesting to see that being pulled because San Francisco was a very, very friendly place for these companies to
Hmm.
initially start doing it, but also a very challenging place to drive.
Yeah. It's just it's interesting, like how much trust we have in these autonomous systems and things like that. But you still gotta, I mean, just like Donald said, like it's a co-pilot. You have to watch them.
All right, so next up, I want to talk about Google Chrome's new IP
Hmm.
protection. This, as noted in the article, is going to be kind of a nightmare for like websites trying to do fraud protection because it's
Hmm.
basically making little proxies that anybody can hop through. And of course, Google's the one that is going to be doing the proxying. So this concerns me a little bit just because you're allowing Google
Hmm.
to route your traffic for you, which
Sure.
kind of like means that, okay, maybe your internet service provider doesn't see it, but like Google does and stores it.
Right.
And Like, I don't know, I don't know how much information they're getting from that or what they're doing with it. That's just paranoid me, like wondering, asking the what ifs. But for the average person clicking on a tracking link, it certainly seems as though that this would help out a lot for services like, clicking on a canary token or whatever. Anybody that goes to my personal website, like, passes through a canary token because I think it's funny. And, I get kind of a little heat map of like people's like locations just because, like, that's easy. So if Google Chrome rolls this out, then suddenly it's just going to be random and it'll allow me to figure out the course location. So it'll still give me an idea of like the time, like time zone or language or like other information. So I get a rough idea of where that person is to still deliver services to them. But at the same time, it makes it much more difficult to track people unless I'm Google, in which case I have all the information. So yeah, a little bit of back and forth, right? Like we gain a win against like your internet service provider and all these random ad trackers and websites that are tracking you. But we kind of also like give over a little bit of control to Google to do these proxy hops for us. So a little bit of, I guess, a little bit of mixed news, I would say.
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting theory, though. I mean, honestly, because it's well, first they're gonna do what, one proxy, and then they're gonna do two proxies to really really hide it. I think is more or less what they said. Yeah, there it is. Upcoming phase of the two proxy hop system.
Yeah.
It would be,
I'm interested to see because so many people use Chrome. If this is rolled out as like a opted in feature, it really will, I think, have an effect on the way that you can see a user that clicks on a link. Like right now, it's very straightforward, the information you get. I think this might change things a little bit. And that's really interesting for the future of web trackers or tracking URLs that used to be very straightforward. So interesting to see this update that is purportedly going to increase privacy. But I mean, from Google, I mean, if Google's your threat model, then this is probably not going to be fairly news for you. All right, so this is kind of cool. Hackers, well, kind of cool. This is an interesting development. Let's say that. And there's a lot of theories swirling around about what happened here. And this article is a little confusing because it seemed to confirm that hackers have merely updated the implant that they've infected all these Cisco devices with to request an authentication header before responding. And that is basically just because they realize this is a highly visible infection. Everybody can see that these devices are infected. And it's time for them to chill things out a little bit and make it so that it's not so visible which devices have been infected with this backdoor. So this is two zero-day vulnerabilities that were used to hack over 50,000 Cisco iOS XE devices and create privileged user accounts and install a malicious Lua backdoor implant. That Lua backdoor is not persistent, meaning if you reboot it, it'll remove the backdoor, but the credentials that they created still stay there. Now, again, this is interesting because some theories have stated that maybe a gray hat researcher was able to cause a reboot that made all of these backdoors, go away really quickly. But it seems like the predominant theory right now is instead the threat actors were able to just change their strategy and kind of go into a new phase of exploitation where they cut off the ability of anybody else to see these infections and kind of start doing something else.
Sure.
So this is an update that's believed to be deployed to hide their presence and make it so that people can't just scan and look at that. See, went right into the ground. So it looks as though the same threat actor has moved into a phase where they've eliminated the public scanning ability, or at least like the ease of which researchers can identify infected devices. So that's a lot of it. That's a whole botnet worth of infected devices here. So it seems as though that's the predominant theory for what happened. But obviously, like having everybody aware of your new criminal infrastructure is not something that would be very desirable for a group that had just gained that massive of a foothold on Cisco devices. All right, so City of Philadelphia is disclosing a data breach after attackers, quote, may have gained access to city email accounts. This contains personal information, health information, and there have been a number of different breaches here. One of them was a HIPAA, as people like to say, a HIPAA violation related to mental health information. And the second was this more recent exposure of demographic information, name, address, date of birth, social security numbers, medical information such as diagnostic and other treatment-related information, and financial information like claims.
Yeah, not a great one, but they're unfortunately in a long list of major cities to fall victim to this sort of thing. It's tough, but it just proves that there's no there's no getting around it. You know, budgets are always tight, especially in state and local government, and this just has to become more of a priority, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, getting through it. So this story was hard for me to interpret. I thought that
Yes.
this meant that may have breached the entire voter roll of the United States, but it seems like this is just DC, which
Yeah.
is still bad, but
Sure.
better than the whole country, I guess. So the Board of Electors has confirmed that a threat actor may have breached the entire data and systems hosting provider, um, giving them access to the personal information of all registered voters. And this was a lot of information.
Hmm.
This information has also been offered up for sale on breach forums. And yeah, it generally includes, fortunately, the social security numbers on these are partially obscured, but all the rest of
Hmm.
the information is pretty much what you would expect, being that it is a voting role. So addresses, name, date
Right.
of birth, all that stuff. All right. Next up, this was a pretty transparent report of how
Yeah.
the Akira ransomware group hacked the BHI Energy systems. I guess they are. Oh yeah, they're a subsidiary of Westinghouse Company Electric. And it's interesting to see that a lot of companies will really hide like what
Hmm.
happened or who was responsible, whatever. This subsidiary is being very open about what
Yeah.
happened and kind of like trying to give other people a window into how the attack unfolded and what happened. So yeah, it looks like it was a third party contractor. And
Yeah.
often that is the case where, someone on the outside will be given access to the internal network, and then that person gets compromised and their behavior isn't detected in time to realize that
Hmm.
they are a threat. But that's kind of the long and short of it. Is it was a third party contractor, allowed them to get a foothold on the network and get access to a lot of information: full name, date of birth, social security number, and health information about um, employees. All right, we're almost out of time, and
Yeah.
you got something to go to. I've got a flight to catch.
Right.
So let's pick and choose the ones that we're going to talk about. How about this one? I like this one. All right. So when picking an Android application, a lot of people will take a look and see how many downloads there are. And if it
Hmm.
is, like in the Google Play Store and it has like a million downloads, it's generally thought that this is a pretty safe bet, that this is going to be a safe application, right? Like we don't have a lot of other tools to really like check this out and make sure that there aren't infections or any other sort of like malicious things that are loaded after we install it. So I've talked before about the security of the Google Play Store and how they're rolling out on-device detection of these sorts of things, because it is becoming such a problem that
Hmm.
these major apps, which are downloaded lots and lots and lots of times, a million, 500,000, 50,000, 500,000. These are able to employ polymorphism or download components afterwards, which can cause all sorts of malicious things to be added. So this one of them sends people to investment scam sites. So that's got to be
Right.
annoying. But it runs stealthily in the background, abusing the browser. And you know how like sometimes you'll see maybe like a family member's computer and it's just popping up like ads just
Right.
constantly because the browser's
Oh yeah.
infected. Like I haven't seen that in a long time, but this is
No.
basically what it does.
Right.
It'll pop up these ads and like cause them to open in the browser and trick people into
Hmm.
thinking that they're either legitimate or that they're from the device. And there's all sorts of scams that could be run. So yeah, a lot of these apps are very popular. They tend to be like games and things like that. So just be vigilant. If you know anyone that has installed any of these: Eternal Maze, Jungle Jewels, Stellar Secrets, Fire Fruits, Cowboys Frontier, or Enchanted Elixir. These are all games that have been proven to have malicious or spyware add-ons that cause them to do things that are not disclosed to the user. And most of them are linked to scams or other ways for criminals to
Hmm.
be able to make money.
I was gonna say maybe the way to look for it was a bunch of alliteration there, but they switched it up.
Yeah, right. No, they definitely had a thing going, and then you just should have just kept going with it. It seems like Maybe they will. I wonder also if any of these were like chat GPT generated, just because
Right.
it seems like these are like, if I asked
Yeah.
it to come up with a list of like alliterations for like mobile games, like this just seems like what it would do.
Yeah, it does.
All right, so that's I think about all the time we have for today. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us on the show as we do our now normal later time. And if you like the show, if you want to support us, you can do a couple things. One, you can go to veronis.com/Kody, that's Kody, and check out all the awesome other free content that Veronis has to offer. We're not the only people that are putting out great content. There's also the Veronis YouTube channel with great content like speed data, which you can also check out. And we appreciate it. It's a great free way you can support the show and let us know that you enjoy joining us every week. And of course, you can join us both on the Discord server. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel here, Security Forward, and generally show up and ask us questions on Wednesday when we do, well, when I do the Q&A. Hopefully, I'll be doing one on the Hackaday SuperCon conference soon. So if you have questions about SuperCon, I'm really excited to go there. So I'm happy to answer them. And yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody next week. And Kilian, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.
Take care.